Evio.
Welcome back to the Devil's Ledger for the week of February 9th. Again, this is your weekly guide to everything happening across the Evio Creative Network. And before we get into the darkness, a moment for something a little brighter. We're sending our full support and a lot of pride to the 2026 Winter Olympic Games in Milano Cortina, where Team USA is currently competing. Here's hoping for strong finishes, safe runs, and a medal count that keeps climbing. There's something about the Olympics that remind us what human beings are capable of when preparation meets pressure. And now, as always, we begin with the creepiest thing that I heard this week. The storm that buried Iran. In February of 1972, a winter storm moved across Iran that didn't just shut down roads and close schools. It erased places. Over the course of 6 days, a series of blizzards dumped as much as, wait for it, 26 feet of snow across huge portions of the country, the deadliest winter storm ever recorded on Earth. Entire regions disappeared beneath drifts taller than houses. Temperatures dropped to deadly levels, roads vanished, power lines snapped, communication completely collapsed. By the time it ended, more than 4,000 people were dead, and some 200 villages had been completely buried and erased from the map. Rescue crews arriving by helicopter described a landscape that didn't look like a disaster zone. It looked empty, flat, white, silent. Where towns had been, there were only smooth fields of snow. In some places, when workers began digging, they didn't find survivors. They found entire homes preserved beneath drifts. Families frozen where they had taken shelter, as if time had simply stopped. Like a reverse frozen Pompeii. And then there are stories that never made it into official reports. In isolated mountain regions, survivors later spoke about shapes moving in the whiteout, figures walking against the wind, silhouettes that vanished when approached. Others described hearing voices outside their buried homes when no one could possibly have reached them. Some claimed they saw tall, dark forms standing at the edges of the storm, visible only when the wind dropped for a moment before the snow closed in again. Were these hallucinations? Almost certainly. Whiteout conditions, oxygen deprivation, hypothermia, and extreme stress all mixed up can obviously distort your perception. The human brain, desperate for orientation in a featureless world, begins to create shapes or movement, even companionship, where none exists. But knowing all the science doesn't make the experience less terrifying. Imagine being trapped inside a house, buried under more than 20 feet of snow. No light, no sound but the muffled wind from way up above. No way to know if anyone's coming. And outside, in the endless white, something appears to be moving. The storm itself behaved like a living thing. It came in waves, giving brief lulls that convinced rescuers and survivors alike that the worst was over, only to return with even heavier snowfall. Helicopters dropped bread and other food supplies onto the drifts in the hope that anyone still alive might dig their way up to the surface. In one village of 100 people, none survived. What makes the 1972 Iran blizzard so haunting isn't just the scale of the disaster, it's the silence afterward. There were no ruins, no burned structures, no wreckage, just snow. And underneath it, entire communities that had been there just a week earlier. So winter storms don't usually feel supernatural. They're weather, cold, measurable, explainable. But when a storm buries hundreds of villages, cuts off the world, distorts the senses, and leaves survivors describing figures moving through a landscape where no human could possibly survive, it starts to feel less like weather and more like something that came looking for the living. This week on The Devil Within, we stay high in the Alps, but the story moves indoors. At the historic monastery of Monte Berico, an alleged exorcism took place in 2010. What makes this case different isn't just the setting, it's the documentation, witness accounts, church involvement, medical attention, and a series of events that remain, even now, difficult to explain. It's atmospheric, it's unsettling, and grounded just enough to make you wonder where faith ends and something else begins. On the Ides of April, we begin a two-part series on the assassination of Philip II of Macedon, and what just might be history's greatest strategic misreading of the room. The conspirators believed they were ending the growing threat of the Greek world. Instead, they cleared the path for his 20-year-old son, Alexander the Great. Now, history has a word for that kind of outcome. Oops. On Criminal Mischief, at the moment, Carolyn is unavailable. Reports indicate she's somewhere in the Pacific Northwest celebrating along with the rest of Seattle after the Seahawks delivered what can only be described as an enthusiastic and emotionally satisfying total beatdown of the New England Patriots. If that happened on the street, there would be arrests for assault. We expect her to return once the victory parade energy subsides. I'm kidding. There'll be an episode tomorrow. It just might be a little late. Meanwhile, Josh Wolf just continues to show up every day with what has quickly become part of millions of listeners' routines. Every day, honest self-reflection, sharp humor, and the kind of vulnerability that makes you feel like you're not the only one figuring things out as you go. It's funny, it's real, and it's become a can't miss. Finding Me with Josh Wolf, Monday through Friday. And this week in horror, in honor of its record-breaking Oscar recognition, this week's recommendation is the epic vampire thriller, Sinners, from Ryan Coogler. It's found its streaming home on HBO Max, and the film features another powerhouse performance from Michael B. Jordan, along with enough tension and atmosphere and supernatural dread to make your head spin. If you haven't seen it yet, this is the week. So here's wishing you a great, productive week filled with Olympic moments, strong finishes, and plenty of stories from across the Evio Creative Network. And if you're enjoying the shows, subscribe, share with someone who loves great storytelling, rate and review. It helps more listeners find us, and that's what we're trying to build here. So we'll see you next week, right here on The Devil's Ledger. And until then, stay safe out there. The Devil's Ledger is an Evio production recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. For The Devil's Ledger, I'm your writer and host, Brandon Morgan.